Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and welcome, inshallah, to our conversational fiqh, alhamdulillah. First of all, we'd like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for affording us the ability to, alhamdulillah, to be here. And second of all, we'd like to thank all our brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, who joined us last week, alhamdulillah, for our premiere episode, which was the first episode of Conversational Fiqh. Although it was, alhamdulillah, under those constraints, and I was not able to be in the studio, but alhamdulillah, we still, alhamdulillah, had something good, alhamdulillah, and we'd like to thank those brothers and sisters for logging on. For those of you who are on right now, alhamdulillah, we are asking you all, inshallah, to share the live, inshallah. As we mentioned last week, the name Conversational Fiqh, it's just a different way of learning our deen, alhamdulillah. It's not a class, too much of a class formal setting, where, you have a textbook or an exam or something like that. Alhamdulillah, more of the mature students tend to learn easier. And, by just having a conversation, mashallah, just asking questions and getting an answer, So we have taken this, this approach to learning our deen, so that, alhamdulillah, all of us can have some level of benefit, inshallah. Also, last week we mentioned that, we still having some technicalities in working out the interaction, but as of from today, inshallah, alhamdulillah, being in the studio, we would like to tell you all, that you could call in, inshallah, to us, or you can WhatsApp us, inshallah. The number to WhatsApp or to call in the studio is 282-8992, and the brothers in control will be putting up that number right now, inshallah. So you could see that number. It's 282-8992, right? 282-8992, that's the number to call, inshallah. Or you could just simply WhatsApp your questions, your comments. I think we need to change that color, right? Inshallah, so you could see that. Right. So that number is up, inshallah, 282-8992. If you can move it down, maybe I'll go to the white area so that you can see the number. Inshallah. You just bear with us, alhamdulillah. It's kind of, this is the early starts, alhamdulillah. We started, just by doing, 1 and 2, interviews and all of these things, alhamdulillah, because we've seen, there are a lot of stations, alhamdulillah, that provide content, but we have taken the initiative, inshallah, to provide local content, alhamdulillah, and also beneficial content for you, our brothers and sisters, especially, being in the Southland, alhamdulillah, having something of our own, inshallah. And we, alhamdulillah, would like you all to continue to subscribe with us, inshallah. So that number is up on the screen, inshallah, now. The number is 282-8992. 282-8992, inshallah, is that number. So I'll just move my hand down so you can see it a bit. 282-8992 is the number, right? So you can WhatsApp us, inshallah, on this number, or you can call us directly, inshallah. We'll invite a few calls. There are a few people who always look at us, alhamdulillah. Imam Javid, mashallah, was one of them last time. There was another brother from Irene. There's always a Haji in Shan, mashallah, whatever that in Shan, alhamdulillah. So last week, alhamdulillah, we mentioned a few things, and one of the things that we mentioned in class, bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, is we spoke about, what Islam is built on. It's built on shahada, belief, it's iman, salat, zakat, sawm, fasting, and hajj, right? So we wanted to speak a little bit about, last week we said that I would actually show a list of common terms used in fiqh, right? And what happened is I had that list, but due to technical difficulties, I couldn't get it to upload, right? So inshallah, I do have it, and I'll make an attempt, inshallah, again, to at least, if maybe just post it on our Facebook page so that you could have some time to see it and go through it, and the next time, inshallah, that we have this section again, inshallah, we'll show it on the broadcast, inshallah. But I do have it, I did it already, alhamdulillah. common terms that we hear, what is fard, what is wajib, what is sunnat, what is mustahab, what is makruh, inshallah. So we'll go through all those things, alhamdulillah. We spoke about cleanliness being one of the things that is very important and an integral part of Islam. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us in the Holy Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves yuhibbul mutatahhirin. Allah loves those who keep themselves pure and clean. And alhamdulillah, all aspects of purity is implemented in Islam. That cleanliness of our heart, that inner and spiritual cleanliness in us, mashallah, also that physical cleanliness in us. Alhamdulillah. Even last week we spoke about, alhamdulillah, so mashallah. So even last week we spoke about a person using the washroom, right? And the hadith of Abu Dawud, when the non-Muslims at that time had come to the Sahaba, in a mocking and laughing way, and said that your messenger has even taught you how to clean yourself. And the Sahaba replied, yes, our messenger has taught us how to clean ourselves, inshallah. So there's a few brief things. As we say, it's a discussion that we're having, it's a conversation. So if you have a comment to make, if you have a question to ask, feel free. You could WhatsApp us, you could call us, or you could even comment live here on the live, inshallah, and we'll respond to you, inshallah. As I mentioned last class, I'm not here because I know everything. I don't know everything. Actually, I rely on material, to provide you with this class and this information, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Allah is Al-Alim and Allah is Al-Hakim. Allah knows everything, inshallah. But rest assured that there's a question that you ask or a concern that you have and that you bring to us, and I can't find that answer, I will, of course. And even with all the questions that you send, we will cross-reference, inshallah, within the fees, inshallah, and we'll provide you back with that answer, inshallah. As we mentioned last day, the reason that we ask questions is to know. And one, is because we don't know and we want to know, right? And Fiqh, especially, why we study Fiqh is that so that we can make our lives, and especially our ibadat, we can be at ease when we perform our ibadat, because we know that we are doing the things that will fulfill and that will beautify, and that inshallah, with the hope that Allah would accept our ibadat and our worship, inshallah. This is the only reason. A person should never learn Fiqh, right, and study the Fiqh of Islam for argument. Right? This is never encouraged that we study the Fiqh of Islam for argument, but we should study this Fiqh of Islam, mashallah, to make our ibadat better. That when I learn what is the desirables and the mustahabbat, in the different ibadat, in wudu and in everything else, mashallah, that I would actually implement these things into my life. Alhamdulillah. One of the other aspects that I forgot to mention is that, we really like to encourage our brothers and sisters, especially through this class, to sit with your families. Put your children down, even if your children have their tablets and their devices and whatever. Share the life to them. Say, take a look at this. It's ensuring, it's actually a way of saying that you tried to provide education, Islamic education to your children. Some people, they send their children to madrasa. Some people, they send their children to maktab. Some people, they go to the masjid themselves. And alhamdulillah, there are quite a few masjids, mashallah, that have classes, especially on Friday night, in Subrati Masjid, there's Mufti Kalim there. Other neighboring masjids, even BIC, there's classes there. All your masjids, there are classes, just like this, to secure our akhirat and to secure our ibadat, to ensure that we do what would bring the love and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through our ibadat being performed in the correct way, inshallah. So just one of the points, inshallah, that I forgot to mention, sometimes just share the life, share it to even your own children, your own wives, your husbands, you don't necessarily have to see it because it's a conversation, so there's nothing too much to be seen, mashallah. So sometimes, in traffic, when you're coming home from work, just send them that link, that maybe they could just safely, click on that link and then listen to the conversation of Fiqh, on your way home, inshallah. Maybe, a lot of the husbands are home now and the wives are actually, finished with the roti, so while they're sitting having dinner, it's just the concept of why we had this idea of having this class, inshallah. So at the most convenient time, in the most convenient way, inshallah, just so that we would have a good excuse to say. So, mashallah, alhamdulillah, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we back up and running, alhamdulillah. And we just had a little delay, just the entire system just crashed. But alhamdulillah, we're back, inshallah. Somebody asked a very interesting question, alhamdulillah, and jazakallah to the brother for asking that question. And the question is, can someone use toilet paper alone instead of water when passing urine? So, of course, going to the washroom, as we mentioned before, Islam, something that, mashallah, cleanliness is something very important and serious in Islam. So we have a special way of using the washroom. That way of using the washroom is to ensure that, whatever comes out of our body, is najis in Arabic, which means dirty, right? And we must be very careful of those, dirty things, getting in our clothes or on our body, right? And so there's a special way that we as Muslims use the washroom, especially, both men and women. When we go to the washroom, of course, we, make sure we have something on our feet, right? And we cover our head because this is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we go to use the washroom, of course. When we go into the washroom, we would sit and use the washroom, whether we are urinating or defecating, we would sit, right, to use the washroom. Right? Both men and women, right, of course, we would sit and to use the washroom. And one of the more important things is after we finish using the washroom, so while we're in the washroom, we don't make any dua, although a person's stomach might be, his belly would be really hurting, there's no dua inside there, to ask, Allah, is this pain of mine, right? Yeah. So there's no dua in the toilet, there's no dhikr in the toilet, right? Of course, a person, if he has a ring that has Arabic on it, right, or any paper or writing or anything like that, it must be safeguarded, put away, into his pocket, to put away to some place outside, and then the person, he or she would proceed to use the washroom. After relieving yourself, we would use water. So for a person to use toilet paper alone, right, this is not something in Islam. We use water. Just last night, I was looking at one of those Facebook videos. I don't know if it was one of those reels or what it was, but it was a post that somebody had up, and they had some peanut butter in their hands, and they're showing you what's the result of just merely using just toilet paper alone versus using water, which is more hygienic, which would actually remove everything, inshallah, that would come out, and that would keep a person clean and not be affected from the impurities that would come upon a person, or could come upon a person's body. Why? Because we want to ensure that our body is clean and our clothing is clean, because this is, as we mentioned last class, it's a requirement for the correctness of our salat and our ibadah. Inshallah. So as we continue, inshallah, we say jazakallah to that brother for sending in that question on WhatsApp. As you say, you could WhatsApp our number 282-8992, or you could call us in, question, comment, concern, anything, or just merely to interact and have that conversation with us. Inshallah, we welcome that, inshallah. So we were mentioning that the reason for learning fiqh, right, and for studying fiqh is not to argue with people, but it's simply just so that when we perform our ibadat and our worship, we can be more at ease in our minds, right? And that we could be, pleased to know that we're doing this, mashallah, in the best manner and the best way, right? So that, inshallah, Allah would accept our ibadat and our worship. Alhamdulillah. So one of the things that is very, that a lot of people are familiar with, even Muslims, non-Muslims, they're familiar with Muslims. When they go to pray, they wash themselves. That washing, as we said last day, is called wudu, right? Wudu, right? And this is certain acts encouraged when making wudu. These acts perfect the wudu and increase the reward. If these acts are left out, wudu will still be correct, and we carry out these acts because they show our love for Allah and His Deen. So last day I mentioned about the third, the compulsory acts of wudu, right? That was the washing of the face, right? Washing of your hands until your elbow, wiping over your head, and washing your feet up to the ankles, right? And I mentioned that this were the fara'id, or the compulsory acts of wudu. Not that we would learn it to only restrict our wudu to these actions, but that we would know that we need to pay particular attention to these actions, so that we would ensure if these actions are, we pay, good attention to them, right? Then, of course, mashallah, we would know that we have proper wudu, because no wudu, no salat. As they say, al-miftah salat al-wudu, wal-wudu miftah al-jannah, right? Sorry. Wudu miftah salat, wa salat miftah al-jannah. Wudu is the key to salat, and salat is the key to Jannah, right? MashaAllah. Salat is the key to Jannah, alhamdulillah. So, if we have no wudu, then of course we'll have no salat. And if we have no salat, then that's a problem, because that's the first thing to be accounted and to be, reckoned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reckoned for by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. So a person, we need to be careful about our cleanliness, so that we could secure our ibadat, our salat, and that we could gain that reward and secure that reward from Allah ta'ala, which is Jannah. So there are 5 mustahab acts of wudu. And as I mentioned last time, that I had some, had some difficulty in putting up the different terms that we use in fiqh. So inshallah, I'll post it to the Anur TTTV, page on Facebook, inshallah. I'll post it there, inshallah. If there's any the viewers, inshallah, would also like to send your number, right, whether privately to me or through Anur, inshallah, so that we could maybe create that fit group, so that when we come on live, you could ask your questions, or the after class question that you would ask, the easy way to that everybody could benefit from your question, inshallah. So the first thing that we do in practical wudu is that of course we make that intention in our mind. Not too, it doesn't necessarily have to be expressed, but that we have an intention, and that simple intention is that we are going to perform wudu as a means of removing impurities from our body, so that we could perform ibadat and the worship of Allah. That's simple, right? The second is that we say Bismillah, of course, because, alhamdulillah, we say Bismillah. We begin everything, alhamdulillah, we should say Bismillah. We put both hands up to the wrist 3 times, right? And, something, of course, yes, washing is that amount of water that, 1 or 2 drops or whatever drops off from the limb itself, right? And, we just wanting to make sure that wudu, and especially when we make wudu, a part of washing is also, rubbing, rubbing and making sure, that the water goes everywhere, and that all the impurities are actually out, from our hands and the parts of our body that we wash. So we wash our hands, and the reason we wash our hands is because the hands are the instruments, that we're actually going to use to clean the rest of our body. So if our hands are dirty, right, then we're just going to spread that dirtiness all around, right? And after we wash our hands, right, we make miswak. Alhamdulillah, we just like to, inshallah, go for a short break. And when we come back, we speak more about, the sequence and, the mannerism and how we perform wudu, inshallah. So we'll take a short break. Please, during the break, share the live, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. For those who, were cut off from the beginning of the live, just let them know we're back on and we're continuing, inshallah. So after this break, inshallah, we'll return. Assalamu
حياتي قرآن رحمن يا رحمن ساعدني يا رحمن اشرح صدري قرآن املأ قلبي قرآن واسق حياتي قرآن رحمن رحمن ساعدني يا رحمن اشرح صدري قرآن املأ قلبي قرآن واسق حياتي قرآن لله لله يهفو آملي لله ولحفظ كتاب الله من أول بسم الله للختم وللرضوان رحمن يا رحمن بمجيني يا رحمن أصبحي ما يدوشو نبني ما يوسيتي
welcome back, alhamdulillah, to our conversational fiqh. So we were speaking about the kayfiyat or how we make wudu, right? Alhamdulillah. And we said that the first thing that we want to do is that we make that intention expressed or not, and just simply have that in our minds that we're going to make wudu and that we want to remove all those impurities from our body and make ourselves, in a state where, where we would be able to perform our ibadat and our worship, right? So we make that, we say Bismillah, and then we wash both hands up to the wrist 3 times because we want, and we said that these are the instruments through which we're going to clean the rest of our body, so that we want to make sure that this part of our body is clean, right? One thing that while we wash our hands, we, although it is not fard, but the part of washing our hands is that we ensure that, we do khilal of our fingers. And khilal simply means the intermingling of our finger between another finger. And simply like this, just washing our hands and showing all between, our fingers are washed. Throughout this COVID period, people were, making a hassle of, why should I wash my hand? Why should I, every time I go somewhere, I need to sanitize, I need to wash my hand. And, we all heard the comments that, Muslims are people who, shouldn't have a problem washing their hands because of the fact that they make wudu 5 times a day. And, in just making wudu, of course, we wash our hands 5 times a day, and knowing that our hands are, there's a part of the body that could pick up so much germs, and that we need to ensure that our hands are clean even when we make wudu. The second thing is to make miswak, and before we went for the break, I said that we'll speak about miswak. A miswak, unfortunately, I don't have any. It's a sunnah that we're all guilty of some level, leaving it out at some level. Whether we have it in our cars, whether we've used it already in our lives or not. It's a simple twig. It's a piece of stick. That comes from the pilu tree. And the Prophet ﷺ has placed a lot of benefits and a lot of reward, even to the amount of times that our salah and the beauty of our salah will be multiplied, by just a person using and making miswak, alhamdulillah, right? And it's just that simple twig, that we chew up we make a cut into it, and then, we just merely just like pong it up sometimes, we use it like a toothbrush, right? If you want to say, we use it like a toothbrush, just to brush our teeth and our gum. It strengthens your gum. One of the spiritual aspects of it is that it multiplies our salat even 70 times more. Another benefit, even mentioned Fazali Amal, that when the time comes for death, that Allah would make it easy for that person to recite the kalima, right? For that person to recite the kalima at that time, right? So all in all, miswak is something that we should have, inshallah, myself and everybody. May Allah make it easy for us, right? In the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Lawla an ashqa ala ummati la amartuhum bisiwak." Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, had I not, wished to make it difficult on my ummah, that I would have ordered them to make miswak. Right? So sometimes if we don't have a miswak, then we simply use our index finger, right? And we just simply brush our gums and our teeth, right? Like that. So when we make miswak, we gargle the mouth 3 times, and we clean our nose 3 times, our nostrils 3 times. We wash the face 3 times, right? And in washing, especially the month of Ramadan is coming up, so in gargling, where a person will put water into his throat and he will and he will gargle, we encourage not to exaggerate the gargling, just so that there's a possibility of the water actually going down, our throat and would break our fast, right? So we don't want to gargle in this way, right? Especially when we're fasting, that we exaggerate it, and the water would enter, our fast would be broken. The other thing is, even with putting water into our nostril, right? We try to we don't just shove it up like this, we do it gently. Even in wudu, we don't do it hurriedly. Part of, the beautification of our wudu is that we take our time. This is a part, where we actually going to speak to Allah, to worship Allah Ta'ala. So it shouldn't be in a rush. Of course, there are times when we're in a rush for salat and we're late, or we're in the masjid, we go into the masjid and salat has already started. But even then, we should take, just as they say, just pause and just let it flow, go with the the natural flow of doing it, in the best way, inshallah ta'ala. So we put in water into our nostril, we use our right hand and we put water into our nostril like this, just a little bit up, right? Especially when we're fasting, we try not to cross, the soft bone, as they say in our nostrils, right? And we try not to go too much up with them. We use our pinky finger and our thumb finger for our left hands, and we try to clean out our nostrils, right? And alhamdulillah, we all have that time, as I say that, I remember, sometimes we just sit in, maybe in the office with co-workers, or we sit in at home and we just see somebody, just digging, and we see like, you're digging for gold, so what we're making wudu, and if we perform our wudu in a sunnah way, mashallah, we wouldn't have the reason to be looking for gold, because our nostrils would already be clean. Of course, there's that, unexpected, irritation or whatever the case is. But it's just to show you, the acts that we do in ibadat and through our deen is actually something so natural and part of our life. There are many people who would do things and it's like out of the normal for them. But Islam, mashallah, our ibadat and pleasing Allah is so natural. It doesn't take too much extra. There's nothing out of the normal about it. Mashallah. It's just all natural things that surround your natural cycle and, as they say, our routine of life, mashallah. So Islam just complements everything, mashallah. Some people, they would get up in the morning. Imagine a Muslim, he gets up in the morning, he uses the washroom, he washes himself. Some people get up in the morning and they don't even bathe. Far less they even wash themselves. If a person has washed himself, mashallah, after using the washroom, his private area is clean, he goes to the masjid, he puts on a little itter after making wudu, which is just washing his body, cleaning his body, mashallah. Even if he doesn't return home to have a complete bath, he still leaves the house in such, mashallah, such good, clean way. Alhamdulillah, there are many people who they just get up, they scampering to turn off their alarms. They would just turn off their alarm, sometimes put on their clothing and just be brushing their teeth on the way out of their teeth on the way out of their apartment or their house or something like that. So Islam, mashallah, has come, to perfect our life. Alhamdulillah, all these things are just a complement in our normal routine of life. So we wash our face 3 times, as we said. And as we spoke about, people hurrying down their wudu, right? We need to understand something. Sometimes we wash our face. And when we wash our faces, we take the water and we just do this. Pay very good attention. We just do this. Just where my hands are, that's all where the water reaches. Some people, they slap the water onto their face. This is not encouraged in making wudu, right? But what is the definition of our face? The definition of our face is min qusur ash-sha'r, from our hairline. I know some people have a little extended hairline, but from where our hairline would normally start from, right? So from our hairline until underneath our chin, ila asfal al-duqn, until underneath our chin, and from shahmat al-udunain, from the earlobe to the earlobe, right? So sometimes we wash our faces, and when we wash our faces, right, all hair is left dry. All hair is left dry. To the side of our hair, everything is left dry, right? So a person who does like this, then that person, he has no wudu. His wudu is incomplete because he has to wash his entire face, but he's left out here, which is part of his face, so he has no wudu. So we need to ensure that when we wash our face, we take the water, we just calmly, mashallah, wash our entire face. Right? Somebody who has thick beard, right, they will do a khilal of the beard, I just pass their fingers through their beard, right, and all of that, right? The other thing is that we wash both arms 3 times, right? We speak about the arm, we wash from the tip of our fingers until just after our elbow, right? Both hands, right? We do that. Then we wash our hands again, and then we make masa, right? Now, some people, even when I was small and, going to our normal masjid, maktab, and all of that, from small we learned and we saw our elders doing masa 3 times also. This is not the case. We should not be doing masa 3 times. Because masa means wiping, and Allah gives the order in Quran to wipe, not to wash. And excessive wiping leads to washing, right? So we should only wipe on our head once, right? We wipe from our hairline, right? And we go back, right? And this is something we should pay attention to. Some people, the top part, no, it's our entire head. So we wipe like this. Our palms must be on our head. We wipe like this, and we go back. Then we flip our hands, wiping the nape, right? And then we clean our hair, right? So this is the way that we make masaba over our head. So every other part is washed 3 times, except, for masa, we ensure that we wipe only once. The other thing is that we wash both feet. We wash both feet, right? And while washing our feet, we use our finger, right, to put them between the toes to ensure that the entire of our feet and all between the toes are washed, right? Alhamdulillah. So this is just wudu from a broad aspect. To single out the activities that we do, we know the third part of wudu is actually washing the face, washing your arms, wiping over your head, and washing the feet. These actions, the third of it is only to do it once, right? Of course, but we sunnah is that we do everything 3 times, and the only thing we do 1 time is wiping our heads. Why? Again, because the order of Allah Ta'ala is to wipe on our head, and excessive wiping leads to washing. The mustahab acts of wudu, and the things that are desirable. It's like the salt in the food is the things that the extra things that we would do, mashallah, to make our wudu perfect, inshallah. The first thing is that there are 5 things that are mustahab in wudu, and the first is to begin with the right hand when washing each limb. So we always begin with the right side. Why? Because Allah loves the right side, right? 2, to make masa of the nape, right? This portion here of the neck, right? To make wudu without the help of another person is also mustahab. To face the qibla, and the word qibla and Kaaba. So when we say facing the Kaaba, is actually facing the Kaaba itself, that is in Makkah. And when we say qibla, we mean facing the direction of the Kaaba, right? The other is to sit on a high and clean place to make our wudu. These are the things that would be add to the beauty of our wudu, inshallah. So we'll go for a break and we'll come back, inshallah, to continue.
ربي من سؤالي واختياري، فدعائي وابتهالي شهيد لي بافتقاري. قد كفاني علم ربي من سؤالي واختياري، فدعائي وابتهالي شهيد لي بافتقاري. قد كفاني علم ربي من سؤالي واختياري، فدعائي وابتهالي شهيد لي بافتقاري. قد كفاني علم ربي من سؤالي واختياري، فدعائي وابتهالي شهيد لي بافتقاري. قد كفاني علم ربي من سؤالي واختياري. نور على مر الزمان تألقا، وأضاء للدنيا طريقا، وهدى من الرحمن يهدينا به للصالحات وللمكارم والتقى. نور على مر الزمان تألقا، وأضاء للدنيا طريقا مشرقا، وهدى من الرحمن يهدينا به للصالحات وللمكارم والتقى. هذا كتاب الله أعذب منهل أنعم به من مورد لمن استقى. قد صانه رب العباد بحفظه، وحماه حتى لا يضيع ويخلقا. طوبى لمن حفظ الكتاب بصدره، فبدا رضيئا كالنجوم تألقا، وتمثل القرآن في أخلاقه وفعاله، فيه الفؤاد تعلقا، وتلاه في جنح الدجى متدبرا، والدمع من بين الجفون ترقرقا. هذه صفات الحافظين كتابه حقا، فكن بصفاتهم متخلقا. يا حافظ القرآن رتل آيه، فالكل أنصار أنصت للتلاوة مطرقا يا حافظ القرآن لست بحافظ حتى تكون لما حفظت مطبقا ماذا يفيدك أن تسمى حافظا وكتاب ربك في الفؤاد تمزقا يا أمتي القرآن حبل نجاتنا فتمسكي بعراه كي لا نغرقا.
So welcome back. Alhamdulillah. The last ad that you all would have seen is our lunch fundraiser that we have in at An-Nur Islamic Academy. Just ask the brothers of control just to flash that ad back up again, so that you can have a look at it, inshallah. Yeah, that one. So it's a lunch fundraiser that we're having for An-Nur Islamic Academy. We had it on a Wednesday because of the fact that it's a working day, and we thought of providing lunch for the working people. Alhamdulillah. So even if at your own workplace, alhamdulillah, or your wherever you are, you could get a few orders for us, alhamdulillah. It's just a last lap before the month of Ramadan to make that plea, to get some donations and funds, because all that you see here, I'll talk to you about that, later, inshallah. But just take a look at this this ad and keep it in mind. We speak about it in my closing comments, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. So we want to continue, inshallah. We want to continue with there's some dislike acts of wudu, right? Some dislike acts of wudu. And I'm just returning a call here to one of our, mashallah, Haji Sahib, assalamu alaikum, you're live on An-Nur TV. I know you are a very disciplined viewer, so I decided to, to call you a bit to see and get a few comments of how the episode is actually going. I don't know if you're logged on right now. I don't know if I'm catching you off guard, but you're live, inshallah. Oh, you're just doing a massage. Okay, so maybe we'll put up, they're hearing you live on TV, inshallah. So maybe we'll put up one of your ads, inshallah, for sure. So at least the Muslim brothers could know there's a good source of comfort and relaxation through the professional massage and, the good hands of Brother Haji, inshallah. So
Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah.
One thing I could comment on is that you guys have been doing an extremely fantastic job in trying to teach the Ummah about their deen and how to perfect their salah and how to perfect their iman.
Alhamdulillah.
One thing I could tell the viewers is no matter what happened to you in life, always pray.
Alhamdulillah.
Never neglect your 5 times salah. Salah is simple way. We love it complicated, but yet full of taste and flavor.
Mashallah.
As well as we'll be doing some fried rice and some noodles.
Oh, mashallah.
And trust me, those who have had our food in the past completely enjoyed it, especially that beef in Tobago.
Yes. I remember that.
We still talk about that beef.
Yes. So, Haji, just so we'll continue the class, inshallah. But as we give advice in the beginning of the class, while you do the massage next time, it's called Conversational Fiqh. So there's nothing too much to see except me and the beautiful background that we have. So if you could just hit the link next time, and while you massage, you could just listen to the program, inshallah. Jazakallah for your time.
No, not a problem.
Inshallah.
Actually, I've just finished. I'm going to log on now.
Okay, inshallah. Well, please do, inshallah. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah. That was brother, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. So you all are invited, inshallah, to call in, share your words. I saw Imam Zah trying to call me here, but I didn't get through it yet. I'll call him, but let's continue, inshallah, and just finish up, inshallah. So while there are things that would perfect our ibadat and our worship, there are things that would also, destroy or take away from that beauty and that perfection of our ibadat. And especially in the case of wudu, there are some makruhat, and there are some things that are disliked, right, in performing wudu. Certain acts that are disliked when making wudu. Right, these acts would actually lessen the reward of the wudu, right, and cause the blessing of the wudu to be lost. Right, we must avoid these acts because they're actually disliked by Allah. When we say dislike, it's actually disliked by Allah Ta'ala. Right, there are 4 makruhats in wudu, and the first is to make wudu in a dirty place. How can we make wudu, and how can you purify yourself in a dirty place? We could never purify ourselves in a dirty place. Right, so we should, of course, in wanting to purify ourselves, find a clean and pure place that we could actually purify ourselves, inshallah. 2, to clean the nose with the right hand, of course, because why? We don't like to do anything dirty with our right hand, and that was one point to remind me of, especially when we're speaking about using the washroom. Of course, when we clean ourselves with our left hand. We clean ourselves with our left hand and not our right hand. So even in wudu, we should clean ourselves with our left hand, right? To talk of worldly matters while making wudu. And this is really a big one for me because, let's look at it. Both you and I, sometimes we're guilty of, we go into the masjid, which is a place that we're going to worship Allah Ta'ala. So we go to the masjid, we're speaking, we're talking with people. The azan calls, azan is the call to go to the masjid. In the time of Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala majma'in, they would be, going, perform their sunnat salat already, and they'll be going to the masjid for salah, for fard salat. We hear the azan, and when we hear the azan, as our Ustad used to tell us, azan is the call to prayer, not the call to wudu. So when we hear azan, it's only then that we're rushing to perform wudu. And in many places, even when you go to Umrah or you go to Hajj, anywhere you go, we always have that bad habit, if you want to say, if a better way to say it, of only going to make wudu when the azan calls. So we're in that rush. We make it wudu and we continue the conversation while making wudu. And then when we enter the masjid, we're still speaking. The Qama is calling, we're still speaking. And then the Imam says Allahu Akbar, and then we hurriedly say Allahu Akbar. How could we concentrate in that salat? How could we concentrate in that salat if all this time was just engaged in speaking? And as a little boy growing up, our grandparents used to always, tell us and teach us that when we talk, we should start over wudu, right? But a person might argue and say, that isn't nullified. Wudu is not nullified, so why should you start over? But mashallah, maybe it was that training for us to understand that, mashallah, we are going to perform wudu, to perform a very great ibadat, which is very much, something big in the sight, even in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something very important. and that we should leave aside this world, and that we should put our full attention into, making that wudu and to concentrate on what we're doing. If you look at it, there's many and numerous of narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that speaks about the reward of a person sitting in the masjid waiting on salah, not doing anything except waiting on salah. He's as though he is in salah. So this shows the, very great, mashallah, aspect of, just being quiet, silent in the masjid, not speaking, leaving all the world outside. Today our masjids are so big. We have enough. We go to the mall is very to perform wudu against the sunnah order, right? It is makruh. For example, a person washing his feet first or whatever. But of course, there are times when, like for example, you're in an airport or you're traveling and it's kind of difficult, to wash to take off the socks and put it on. So sometimes people do that first and then, make the rest of the wudu, but it's not encouraged. But sometimes we have to improvise. I think there was a question also from our brother Niraz, mashallah, jazakallah for your question, brother Niraz, for could a person could squeeze the water from the toilet paper? Yes, so sometimes in the washroom, especially in our western areas, we really have to improvise, right? So I know, sometimes it's not something that we could just say it off like that. Of course, your situation, and if that is the way of getting the water in, to squeeze the water out of the wet the toilet paper, or if you could wet the toilet paper and use it. Awesome. Now, I wouldn't, and I still get reference for that, inshallah, to get back a correct answer to you. But sometimes, in my understanding, that would actually spread the dirtiness more. If it was actually a means of getting the water, squeezing the water out so that it actually drips and washes the part, no problem. But I'll have to find out the answer to that one for you, inshallah. Right. So this brings us to the end of our topic tonight. I just want to speak to you all, inshallah, a little bit about the fundraiser that we have, inshallah, at Nur Islamic Academy. We have a preschool, primary school, and a secondary school, inshallah, right, in our care. And all these, schools is actually funded privately by you, the generous Muslim public, the hardworking people of our beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago, mashallah. There's a lot of costs that we need to offset, in just the operation of this foundation. I'll be honest to you, this annual TTTV, we just have one computer and those two simple camcorders that we have. Alhamdulillah, through the grace of Allah, has continued to work faithfully. We might have the now and again unexpected shutdown, to which we ask Allah to perfect and to make our efforts better, inshallah. See, I have a call here from Imam Zah. Assalamu alaikum, Imam. You're live on Nur TTTV. So, alhamdulillah, jazakallah for watching. We know that you're always watching the program, alhamdulillah.
Yes, of course.
So we invite any questions or comments or remarks or anything like that, mashallah. How are you, Imam? Everything good?
Yes, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, coming along. I just logged on to we have a Thursday program today.
Oh, okay, mashallah.
I just came off to take the call.
Oh, sorry to disturb you.
But alhamdulillah, but alhamdulillah, Allah's used Anul TTTV as a means to propagate the deen, which is very commendable. And I commend you
yourself and Hafs Farid and Hafs Kalim and the others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to put barakat in everything that you're doing with the TV station and the and with your different various charity drives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you and the team, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Right? And continue with the programming, just to propagate the deen. It's another avenue, and alhamdulillah for that.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah, Imam Sahib. Don't forget we have a fundraiser on the 8th of February, so you can tell the Jamaat,
inshallah.
We will drop the
Inshallah. I will do that.
Inshallah. Jazakallah.
All right, no
okay,
problem.
Imam, all the best to you too and your family.
Assalamu
alaikum. Imam is actually the person who created the first backdrop for our launch and of Anur TV, mashallah, and they're always there logging on. So as I was saying, inshallah, we have a lot of expenses to offset, alhamdulillah. We have a lot of plans to move ahead, inshallah, with Anur Islamic Academy, alhamdulillah. And we'd like to make you part of it, send us your recommendation, your comments. Sometimes I know the live goes a bit late or starts a bit late. There's a little hiccup in here and there, but please bear with us, as they say, from strength to strength, inshallah, bi tawfiqillahi ta'ala, with that divine intervention and help from Allah ta'ala, inshallah. We hope to reach to that state of perfection, in providing our services to you and working in the path of Allah ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, we have shown all the ads thus far, the preschool, primary school, and there's also a secondary class, alhamdulillah. So we'd like you to become part of Anur Islamic Academy, as much as you could. If there's a program in your masjid or there's somebody in your masjid with a specific talent, mashallah, that you would like us to showcase, alhamdulillah, then please feel free, inshallah, to reach out to us, inshallah. All the numbers are, will be listed, inshallah. 363-9800 is our official number. 363-9800 is our official number for Anur Islamic Academy. And to just continue, inshallah, to just spread the message, share the message, inshallah. And we hope and we pray, inshallah, that Allah Ta'ala accepts the effort of both you and I, and the effort that we make for His deen. This month of Ramadan, we have a lot of anticipation to do a lot more programming. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of preparation and commitment, to do these things, inshallah. So we thank you for being with us, for holding on with us, inshallah. And there's a lot more exciting and new to come to you, inshallah. Just like they say, jazakallah to the hard work, mashallah, Hafiz Kalim and the other brothers, alhamdulillah. Today, we see we have a perfect, screen behind us, the different design and everything. So our program, the level of production is going up, inshallah. And as you continue to donate with us, even to the small businesses, the big businesses, even better, mashallah. We invite you to advertise with us, and all the proceeds of Anur TV it goes towards the running of Anur Islamic Academy. It's not a business, right? It's just another form of income for the effort of deen, solely and only for the effort of deen, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow the breeze of and that wind of hidayat and solution and guideline and guidance of His guidance to blow through your homes, just as you have allowed us to enter your homes, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow us to correct and to strengthen our iman, to see the month of Ramadan, and to come through the month of Ramadan being forgiven by Allah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairul jaza for joining us this afternoon, alhamdulillah, for Conversational Fiqh. And we will continue next Thursday, inshallah, with another episode of Conversational Fiqh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
حبيبي تميل ومعي بهذا شاهد ودليل أما الدليل إذا ذكرت محمدا صارت دموع العاشقين تسيل كل القلوب إلى الحبيب تميل ومعي بهذا شاهد ودليل أما الدليل. Been waiting I've been hurting, 'cause I've been falling. I need your help. My heart is breaking, so tired of crying. Lord, I'm calling. I need your help. I've been waiting, I've been hurting, 'cause I've been falling. I need your help. My heart is breaking, so tired of crying. Lord, I'm calling. I need your help. I've been waiting, I've been hurting, 'cause I've been falling. I need your help. My heart is breaking, so tired of crying.